All right, thank you so much for having me. It's great to see so many, in fact, almost to me, all new faces except for a couple of you. So, well, number one, that just tells me how long it's been since I've been up here, which is something that we want to change. One thing I want to point out, I wrote up on the board this very long, clunky URL. I think Caitlin said this was pinned to the top of the Facebook group. This is where I set up all of the volunteer resources so far. So some of you, this might look familiar to some of you. It's kind of the intro, suggested here, watch this. I have made some changes to it though, so I am gonna relay the audio, redo it, and I'll post this new one up, because I think the last one's from 22, then we updated it for 24, but.
I did email it to everybody recently, so everybody
Okay,
got
good,
it in their
good.
email.
Because I know this whole clunky URL, but it's a hidden page on this website that I have designed for, fostering and rescuing and bringing home a new dog. That site itself also has a lot of good resources on it for adopters and things like that. Okay, so yeah, my name's Ann, and I did want to make a comment. The dog training world, the dog behavior world is it's an unregulated industry. So this title of canine behavior consultant, what all that means, because to be a dog trainer, you don't have to have any kind of education or whatever. It's unregulated. But so what a behavior consultant just means is that I've gone through a bunch of certifications, I've done special study, and then received this, title from like an agent or a body that does the certification work and stuff like that. But it's not a requirement, just so everybody knows. But anyway, I specialize in fear and behaviors related to fear and anxiety. And so, that is one of the topics that I want to get to. One thing that I was talking about before everybody got here, what would be really helpful, is I'd love to get this back, to keep the momentum with the once a month, let's get together. And then after today, which is sort of a big, wide net, focus on real specific topics. So it would be real, and the ones that I know right off the top of my head: how do we deal with fearful and shy dogs? Adoption counseling, reactivity. Those things are always something that we have to talk about. But if there are ever other things, if there's somebody in the group that kind of wants to spearhead the gathering of topics for, that you can just send me and I can set it up so that we have things, going forward to talk about. The format is typically, we'll do 1 month where we're chit-chatty, and then the next month we'll go out and then do hands-on based on, kind of what we've already learned. And so there is a bit of an aggregate learning curve, right? We start out with some more basic stuff and then we move. And I think where we got as far as last time was as far as reactivity. We never covered shies and fearfuls, so that's something I want to kind of bump to the top of the list. So anyways, I'm open to all the topics. I've got stuff planned, but I want to make sure that I'm including things that you all need. Okay, so we'll just jump on in. I like to ask this question, and it's an informal shout out type situation. What do you believe are the expectations for you here? Because you asked Caitlin, similar question, like what brings you all here? Why are you here? You're here for your own reasons. What do you think is expected of you here? Just throw out some stuff.
To do whatever we can do to gain the trust of the dogs and build their confidence.
Great.
To help make them more adoptable. That's the goal.
Ultimate goal, absolutely. Great. Anything else? Okay. So one thing, yes, and we'll get to that. One thing I like to point out that we always have to enter these environments recognizing that shelter dogs have zero agency over their own lives. Zero. Now, the happiest dogs in the world are indigenous street dogs, the dogs that we see in the villages in Mexico. We do a lot of research, but smarter people than me, scientists, do a lot of research on that dog population because they don't have we don't see the same levels, incidences of aggression, of anxiety. We just don't see it in those populations. And the thinking is, one of the hypothesis is because they have almost complete agency. Now, they might, not get great vet care, But they have complete control over their lives, and they spend their days doing the stuff that dogs were evolved, they evolved with us as a species. They spend their day doing stuff that dogs were meant to do. Seeking, problem solving, all the things, right? So, we have at one end of the spectrum, we have our facility where dogs have, there's really no agency. And then we have this big middle group of pet dogs. So when I go to a client's house and they live in the suburbs, I always have to tell them that just by definition, a dog that lives in the suburbs is a bored dog, right? I mean, if you live on a ranch and they work for you and all that stuff, that's different. Most pet people have a dog that lives with them in their house in the suburbs, or maybe they have some land, whatever, right? So we just have to recognize that shelter dogs have like zero agency, and this will impact certain things. It means that they're undergoing a lot of physical stress and emotional stress kind of all the time, right? Because their lives are just so different here. And those states of mind, those states of being are gonna hamper learning, right? And when I say learning in this context, I mean, like, all right, I gotta teach this dog not to jump on people, or I gotta teach, I wanna teach this dog some behaviors that might help get him adopted better, right? Now they're learning all the time, and we'll be talking about some of the things that they're learning that we don't really love that they're learning. But so we just have to recognize the cognitive part of their brain isn't fully functioning when they're in environments like this. But what are we, what should we be doing? And you called it out. We're going to be building a relationship, and what we don't do when we're with a dog is just as important as what we do. One big thing that we will inadvertently do sometimes is make nervous dogs more nervous by touching them if they don't show that they want to be touched, that kind of thing. So it's real important that we collectively kind of learn about like dog body language. And on that, just so I don't forget, because my brain will, at that link, at that site, at the top of the page is the YouTube link to the playlist with videos for the shelter, specifically pulled for this environment. So please do what you can to check out. I've got a bunch, and I keep adding to it a bunch of great videos about, body language, because that's how they're telling us, how they're feeling. The other thing that we do to build a relationship is we build what's called a very generous reinforcement history, or reward history, if you will, right? We want dogs to see us as like, oh, here she comes, or he, not like, oh, here he comes, right? And number one, sometimes we invoke icky feelings. Number two, we're starting to build that relationship. The dogs are looking to us, and chemically what's happening in their brain, dopamine. Oh, good, here comes this person, doesn't do the things I don't like, and they have great food, right? Because again, we're kind of limited, or they know I love to play a certain thing, or whatever. So we're building a very generous reward history, and that's very easy to do if we know what we're doing. The other thing we have to do, just technically speaking, is to move dogs, safely from the runs to the yards, right? That's just a very basic thing we have to do. Keeping them safe, keeping ourselves safe, which is not easy. So then we're with a dog, we ask, what does this dog need right now from me, right? Because we can have all the plans, and I'm a planner. I like to know, okay, going in and doing this. And, we're a very goal-oriented group, I can already tell. But we have to really say, okay, what's going on with this dog right now? Not what was yesterday, maybe not even what's written up on the notes about the dog, but right now. And typically we find that because they don't have any agency, right, what we need to provide first to them is some kind of enrichment. And that's a really big word in our industry, and I'm very glad. But when a dog gets out of confinement and goes to the outdoors, typically there's some stuff they need to do first. I mean, obviously go to the bathroom or whatever. But they want to investigate their environment. And a lot of times, even if it's the same yard from yesterday, somebody else peed there and they gotta go read that. The other thing is that the sniffing, the act of sniffing, turns on the seeking system of the brain, which is all kind of happy brain chemistry, a lot of dopamine, right? And they're built to do it. So sniffing and foraging are very, very, very important for the mental wellness of dogs. And then the dog is gonna let you know when it's ready to they'll look at you or like, all right, I sniffed everything. Hey, what do you got? Right? They're always looking for reinforcement. What do you got? And so we just have to kind of, and it may not come in the particular outing. That dog may just be like, I just need to decompress, right? I want to lay here in the sun or look around or and we'll talk about, and probably in the context of shies and fearfuls, when a dog isn't paying attention to us, that means something. Right? When they're not oriented to humans, and we see all the different versions here, the dog that just has never met a stranger, hey girl, like you can meet you the first time and they're, they seem like they're happy to meet you. So we like to provide enrichment first, let the brain do its thing. And of course we want to improve the dog's adaptability with whatever training we can get done. And we also have to think about arousal management, and that's something that I'll talk about in a little bit. And by arousal, I just mean it's the adrenaline ladder, right? The term can imply sexual arousal. It just means emotional arousal, excitement. And excitement isn't always good, right? It's, we get to the top of that ladder, and just like with people, overly aroused people make really dumb choices, right? So that's something that we want to do. And then we have to try our best to observe the dog's behaviors over time and then communicate that to the group, right? Because every new person, we'd like to have as much continuity as we can. That's impossible to be perfect in this environment, but we want to be able to best communicate. And however you guys have it set up, and I know that's an ongoing thing in terms of how am I telling the next volunteer what I've done and all of that. And I don't even know how you guys are running it these days, but yeah, so we've got to think about how to communicate the information about the dog. So one of the first things that we do when let's talk about kind of the tools for success here, right? We have to have an understanding of marker training, the marker word, or the marker gesture. And we'll get to that in a minute. And we may decide, and this group will tell me, hey, next month, let's just work on this. Show me how to do this, right? And I'm gonna really be relying on you all, because this is all in the resource center, but I don't know if people have looked at it and understand what's going on, even understand the importance of it. But we really want to develop an understanding of marker training. Because markers are the only consistent communication that a dog's gonna have between handlers, right? We all look different, we all do things different, whatever. The marker is the only thing that the dog's gonna know, oh God, I know what that means, and that guy said it yesterday, but you're not that guy, but okay, at least I understand what that means. Basic understanding of dog body language, particularly because intuitively we evolved, the current science says, we evolved with them as species. We have a very special relationship with domesticated dogs. Sometimes intuitively, we know what a happy dog, like a dog that's interested in us. You think, just stereotypically, think of that golden retriever we've all met, never met a stranger, loose, wiggly body language, wants everyone to touch him, like just that classic kind of, oh, what a happy, human, sociable dog. Well, we all know we don't always see that in this environment, and it's really important to understand, okay, if I don't have that, what am I looking at here? There are two categories. One of them is a video, the petting consent test. This is a video. It's linked on the page as well as it's on the playlist itself. Everybody should watch this. It's short. It shows how dogs initiate contact, how they say, yes, I would like you to touch me, and how they say, no thanks. And the no thanks part, really subtle, okay? And so it's important that we understand, the more we do the thing that they might not be interested in. Now, lots of dogs, they're not biting you in the face to let you know, or biting your hand. That's a whole, red flag, uh-oh, right? But a lot of dogs, don't want to be touched by people they don't know. Many dogs, right? A lot of dogs will tolerate it. You wouldn't necessarily know if you don't know what you're looking at. But many dogs don't want to be touched by people they don't know, and it's super important in that relationship building that we talked about, that we understand what that looks like. And then, of course, learning about fearful body language. I have a slide with a bunch of words on it that, you know, later just as examples, but it's really important I like videos better because you can kind of see it. So we want to, I mean, the other thing that we have to get good at doing, this is the human training part, is we have to practice reinforcing behaviors that we like. These dogs, they might not have been taught any behaviors. They, you know, but they are doing things constantly that are good. Meaning, if you go, and the dog looks at you, you want to mark that, yes, and then reinforce, reward. This goes toward, you know, if they're not jumping all over you, if they act, you know, just sit down. I mean, mark, yes, and reward. Then the dog's going to be like, all of a sudden you become a lot more relevant. You're not asking anything of it. You're just capturing behavior that we like that they do. We're marking it. They're learning that marker, and then they're getting a little dopamine bump from the snack, right? We also have to understand that difficult environments require high value reinforcers, right? So think of yourselves, you know, if hazard pay, just we all know what that is. It's a hard job, you get good pay for that. If we're asking dogs to be in environments that are difficult, we need to pay them well, especially if we're going to be working on something like reactivity or whatever. We need to make the reward worth it for them. And also understanding that if a dog isn't taking food, there's a lot of reasons for that, right? Emotionally, I mean, they can have a stomach ache, you know, whatever, they can just be, but emotionally, because all dogs eat. You know, I hear people, oh, my dog's not very food motivated. All dogs eat, they're motivated by food. The thing is that if you've got your cheese or your freeze-dried treat, or you've got your good stuff, and the dog isn't and has maybe taken it before. A lot of dogs don't, you know, the texture of cheese even. If they've been pretty under-socialized or lived a very, I would say, deprived life, they might have never even had like a soft treat or soft food. So there's that whole texture thing. They spit it out, and they smell it, and then they're kind of like, I don't know, maybe. But like freeze-dried food can be a really good reinforcer because it's pretty smelly. But if a dog isn't taking that food, there's a reason for that, and it's typically there's something going on, right? And human beings, we can be the same way. Some of us are emotional eaters, we get emotional and then we eat. A lot of us are, I'm too stressed out, no, don't even give me the pizza, I can't even think right now. So we just have to understand that these environments do require higher value rewards. And then and dogs, you know, variety and novelty is very important to dogs, right? That's why sniffing around lights their brain on, because they're like, oh, what if I find something here? The value, you know, the novelty factor, the surprise factor, very, very important for happy brain chemistry. And a metaphor I always use is, you know, or analogy I always use is, if I hand you a $1 bill right now, you know, the reward system in your brain does something. I mean, it's money. We've learned to attach value to money. But if you walk outside right now and there's a $1 bill on the ground, what do? Oh my gosh, you guys, I found $1, right? It's the surprise factor. So finding food in a snuffle mat or a cardboard box that's got some paper in it or something like that, that hits the brain differently. These are just some examples. I use something called Happy Howie's. It's in a roll. There's freeze-dried options. I think the shelter is still using string cheese. I don't know. You know, we got to be careful with our dairy stuff on some dog stomachs. Again, if they've had a pretty nutritionally impoverished, doesn't mean they're undernourished, but if they don't have the biome to digest stuff, it can be upsetting to their stomach. So we want to have a lot of that stuff on hand.
I like Fresh Pet. The little ones, the little like kibble size ones that they have in the refrigerator section at any store, any major grocery store.
Oh,
Nice. Okay, good.
Yeah, the
Good.
Fresh Pet.
Yeah. Good. This is just an example of body language of stress and fear, and it's not a complete list. These are just behaviors that dogs normally do. These are normal behaviors for dogs, and they all mean something different, and they can mean something different in context. I'm not going to go over all of them, but you can even see things like, you know, scratching, like when a dog sits down to scratch. They could have an itch, or they're saying, ooh, not quite sure what we're doing right now, and it's called a displacement behavior. like a human, it might be, we're having some conflict internally and we're trying to sort it out. It doesn't always mean disaster, but it can just, it's like humans, we might look at our nails, we're thinking crack the neck before we have to go, you know, whatever, right? So normal looking behaviors, but we in context. And so we always, it's just good to kind of, this is just, like I said, an example. And like sort of what I just alluded to, but you know, if you look, it's very easy to then start seeing everything through a lens of fear, right? And so we have to remember displacement behaviors, which there's a great video on the playlist, and it's kind of new that I've put up there recently about these. What are these behaviors that dogs do? But they're resolving this internal state of conflict. You know, you can observe these, like if you when a dog is alone at the vet. They do a lot of scratching, just all kinds of, I think I have a few, or in a yard, in this context, in a yard with a new person. You might, and if the person's, because of course we're all interested, like, oh my gosh, new dog, and we're staring, eye contact, that can be very, pressure-y for dogs, we're staring, and then you see the dog like, okay, drink some water, sniff over here. They're often like trying to change the subject or trying to resolve some kind of internal conflict, blinking, tongue flicks, that shake off, as if they were wet. Those are pretty typical behaviors. Yawning, and again, yawning could be a tired dog, but in the context, we're always looking at the whole body and watching all the behaviors. But yawning is definitely one that we see a lot when a dog is just like, kind of not quite sure what's going on here. They'll do a yawn. We also see this during training situations. So when part of what we like to do maybe on an outing with the dog is try to do a little training. And we can, we'll maybe be working with the dog and we're doing something. If a dog all of a sudden is like, I love the cheese, but then we're trying to teach them something and then they all of a sudden go, wait a minute, there's an important thing over here that I have to sniff. Mm-hmm. Or they do like what we call a urogenital check, where all of a sudden they're checking their parts out. They might do this scratching. I see this all the time when I just peep my head in to watch a dog training class. The dogs are like, okay, and us, the handler, the person, a lot of times we're just putting so much pressure, or we're not being clear in our communications, but we're staring at them really hard, or we're leaning over, we're going down, and the dog's like, I don't really know what we're doing, but oh, what is this over here that I need to investigate? So anyways, these displacement behaviors are really, really important to kind of have a general understanding, at least, of what you're looking at. Trip to the water bowl, that's another common one, and like if I'm doing training at home or in a client's home, I don't even use a leash, because I want the dog at any time to be able to go, I don't want to do this anymore, and opt out of that situation, because then I have to look at myself and go, wait a minute, I got all the good food that I know you like. What am I doing in this situation that's making you go, no thanks, right? So the displacement behaviors is the category, and like I said, check out the playlist. So before we head on out to do an outing with the dog, right, we have to kind of get organized. We have to get our supplies together, our gear, what are our thoughts? We're getting our leashes, our harness if it's appropriate. We're getting our rewards together. We're getting, any enrichment tools that we might be using, or toys that we know that this dog likes or want to try out that day or whatever. So we have to get our heads and our gear together. One thing, and I put this in here based on feedback, or just stuff that's happened in the past. Getting a harness on a dog, and I see it on the Facebook page, and I'm so glad you guys use harnesses. Getting a harness on a dog is not an easy thing when they are in that run and thinking, all I want to do is get out. So I always say, get the dog out, stand on the leash while you're trying to put the harness on. And you can flip this to put the dog in the yard, then bring out the toys if you have a yard safe dog, or gather your toys first, say, all right, I'm going to be in yard 3, and then bring the dog. Don't torture yourself and try to get it all done on the fly all at once. And then we need to really look inside and ask ourselves, have I worked with this dog before? Like, do I have a general sense of this dog? I mean, he might not be the same as he was yesterday, but have I worked with this dog before? And then here's a really key point. Am I comfortable? Because there are a lot of dogs, y'all, in shelters that I go like, You know what I mean? If they call me out, we need to evaluate this dog, I'm like, oh my, this is a lot. And you know, for me, it'll be a little bit different, but we have to put, and this is a big thing in the dog training world, our egos. We get real attached to our abilities with the animals. Until you're humbled at somewhere in your 20-year career, which does happen, thankfully. But we've got to put aside our ego. We need to be conservative, because remember, if we get hurt or something bad happens, it has a whole filtering effect throughout the shelter. That dog could be then, you know, quarantined, or you could get hurt, which, you know what I mean, which puts you out of being able to be here helping. So be really, really conservative, and don't feel like, you know, ooh, this reflects badly on me if I'm not going to take out this, you know, 14-month-old off the hook pit bull, 80-pound dog, or, you know, whatever. Just keep that in mind. Know your limits. It's also useful to kind of know how long has the dog been here. I mean, anecdotally, because it's such a small shelter, and this is another thing, you know, such a low occupancy shelter with a high ratio of volunteers. So I don't know if anyone's ever volunteered at like Bradshaw or Front Street. So different. You know, it's such a different environment. So you guys actually really get to go deep with these dogs, which is a really wonderful thing. But, you know, if a dog hasn't just rolled in or it's just been put out on the floor, you know, that's going to be maybe different outing than one that's maybe been here and done some outings with people before and stuff. So we like to know how long they've been here. And then we want to know, and hopefully it's documented someplace, is this dog reactive? Like, is this the dog that's going to charge the fence every time another dog walks by? And then we try to work with those dogs in certain designated, and I think you all have done.
The pasture, please.
Right.
Dogs running at the fence line in between that big hall is very dangerous.
Yeah.
So any of those pennies or any of those fence runners, Mabel, any of those dogs, Zendaya,
Pasture. What a gift.
pasture.
Yeah.
You want them all to go to
I want them
pasture.
all to go to the pasture. I do
Okay.
not like it when dogs are running the fence line
I
and
didn't
people
know.
are trying to walk a dog through and there's the rah 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 on each side. It does nobody good. It doesn't do the dogs good either, because they learn that behavior for their future home.
And any important notes on the kennel card, like for example, specific training stuff, like, you know, Fido's up and running on a marker. Good, it's good for everybody to know. Then now, you know, when you go out, you might practice the marker a couple times. Okay, he does get it. Now we can maybe jump into a behavior. Or I've been working on the 1, 2, 3 walk with this dog. And okay, good, maybe I'll try to do that. And all these things that I'm talking about are part of what, you know, the training that we'll be doing with everybody. As far as rewards go, you know, dogs get to decide what they find most rewarding, right? And so I know I did my big spiel about have good stuff, right? But dogs ultimately decide, which is why, you know, variety is really important. Just, we all know string cheese generally, for most dogs, considered a high value reward. When we're thinking about rewards, the dog freebies are okay. Giving a dog, again, we're building a reinforcement history, right? We don't, unless they're doing something nutty, like jumping on you and you can't even reach your pocket or whatever, you can give some freebies for no reason at all. And you know, it's funny because clients have a hard time hearing that, because there are a lot of times people bring a lot of old school baggage to training their dog, and you know, nothing in life is free. And that's something that we used to say, nothing in life is free. A lot of free stuff for our guys here, right? That's okay. We already talked about distracting environments require high value rewards, and you can also increase the value of their dry treats, you know, make them smell better by jamming them in that bag with the cheese. So you can extend, you know what I mean, that just, you know, you can make the kibble smell a little bit better. And then the value of dry dog food or dry treats, you know, it can be increased if they're foraging for it, right? So those are, if we're doing snuffle mats, you know, I probably wouldn't bait it with a bunch of cheese. I'd probably say, let me just use some dog food, maybe a few cheeses, or let me use some freeze-dried stuff, you know, whatever, to have the snuffling. Because again, finding the $1 bill is more exciting than just being handed it. I said that. Okay, let's talk about markers. So a marker marks a specific behavior for the dog. The dog learns that when they hear that sound or see that gesture, yes, that they're about to get paid. It's how we do it in all dog training. And the basis of positive reinforcement training is behaviors that are reinforced, good or bad, are going to happen again, right? So what we're trying to do is let a dog know, yes, the thing that you just did is what got you paid, right? And so and dogs learn very quickly by association. This predicts this. Sometimes too quickly, like, and then we're going, ooh, that's right, I think I've done this whole thing wrong, and they've learned this other thing. But dogs learn very quickly. It takes dogs very little time to learn that yes predicts a treat for them. And I'll tell you why I throw in the gestural cue in this environment too. It's great for deaf dogs, but yeah. So a visual thumbs up plus the verbal yes simultaneously. So I'm gonna ask everybody, just do it real quick right now. Yes.
Yes.
Good. Yes.
Yes.
Nice. Question. Yes.
I have, I use the good boy, good girl, but
Praise.
it's usually in a situation where like they're ahead of me on the leash, but they're not pulling. I mean, I can't run in front of them so that they can see that. How does that fit in?
So once they learn, and that's a really good question. Most of the time when I'm using this, and a lot of this is our muscle memory, is us training ourselves to do it. So in that context, I'd say, right, he might not be able to see you to go do this, but he can hear yes, right? But I still say, just when you practice this to get your own thing, because then when your hands are full, you can still go yes, and it still means something to the dog. And I'll tell you why I really like this gestural one in the facility environment, because I use it in very specific circumstances. But for us to get good at it, we have to keep practicing.
Question.
Yeah.
So to follow up with her question then, so is it beneficial at all to say good boy, good girl?
So
or-
that is praise, and
Okay.
that's different, right?
Okay.
That doesn't, once the dog learns yes, praise does not always predict a reward.
Okay.
Praise is a great way to communicate, oh, good, I love that, good job, right? Tone is what really matters with praise. However, it's not short enough and quick enough for it to be, to make that positive, to make that association between this, like think Pavlov's dog, bell predicts food. Yes, predicts food. We're looking for a short, very short way. So you can say good, and praise is a lovely reinforcer. And there's some great research that shows that some dogs respond even more to verbal praise neurochemically, but typically that's to their people they know, than even food, right? To many dogs, and just for our purposes, good boy probably might not be as meaningful as a piece of cheese. And I just use cheese or a food reward when I'm really trying to teach the marker, capture good behaviors, build that reward history, and then if I'm working on a specific behavior, like we're gonna teach them touch, where they target your hand with their nose, right? We're gonna, yes, and then we're gonna pay. So good boy and good girl is great. Just remember, dogs get to decide what they find reinforcing. That might not be as reinforcing, and it doesn't. And with praise, we don't follow it. We don't have to do that 1-to-1 ratio.
Right.
Follow it with a treat.
Right.
Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yes.
Okay. And just a reminder, the marker is the only consistent communication between handlers. And I would argue, and dogs are very good, because I remember a year ago or whenever we were doing this before, some people did this, some people did this. Technically speaking, dogs, they are very good at reading. They learn gestural cues more quickly than they learn verbal cues even. But we're a talky species, and so to tell people not to talk is a little bit difficult. And then, like you said, if they can't see you, using a gestural cue isn't particularly helpful. But even with man deep voice, yes, versus yes with our lady voice, even all that, it's still something. And then dogs do catch on, right? They catch on. But just know that it does, this and this will look very different to a dog. Now, do they ultimately get it, like after enough? Sure. But if we're really trying to provide clarity, which reduces stress, we really want to think about our movements and how we're training.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I have one more question before you head off on this one.
Yeah.
Okay, you're push treat, right?
Yes.
So in a shelter environment, as you see all of our volunteers,
Right.
on those days, that we are constantly everybody's treating these dogs, and these dogs go out quite a few times. I know there's been some times where our dogs have had problems with their system, so how do we get around that?
Well, I'll address what I think would be a good idea in a later slide, but it's a really good question. And remember, stress is gonna create tummy stuff, right? So we do our best to not upset their tummies, but I do have some guidelines. A 10 treat training session is kind of a good guideline. So where you might, say, okay, 10 treats that I'm gonna use in this outing.
So everybody's giving them 10 treats?
Well, it depends on number of outings, which I want to address
Right, which
too.
is, yeah.
I want to address that too, yeah. So, yes, but it's a valid question, right? And so, because again, these dogs don't all have this wonderful microbiome that, they may not have had owners that fed them 18 different kinds of proteins and different fats and dairy and all that kind of stuff. It can affect their gut, and stress will affect their gut too.
So you can always start with less high value.
Yes.
So if the dog is gonna work hard for kibble, great,
Right,
go off of that.
yeah,
If the dog is gonna work harder for the freeze-dried treats, love those, great, do that. Cheese is your third tier value.
yes.
So that's gonna be like the highest value treat that you can do. Figure out if the dog is willing to work for under the cheese,
Yes,
right?
thank
So
you.
find out
Yes.
what's gonna motivate them. If they're motivated by kibble, just use that.
So I'm not a big treat person, I'm more of a love and kinda, petting them and stuff like that.
Okay,
But I notice certain dogs that do need that treat, they prefer that treat.
Yeah.
Like
a
Gator
lot of dogs.
was better if you're out walking with him, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden he decided, well, I'm done with walking, I'm just gonna sit here.
Mhm.
The best way to encourage him, I mean, I have 200-pound dogs, I'm used to big dogs,
Mhm.
but, so for him, you could try to muscle him, but it's easier for him just to be like, oh, he was so motivated by
Sure.
a piece of cheese, that
Lord.
it's like, okay, I'll follow you to the end of the
Right,
world.
right.
So there I would give treats, certain ones I'd give treats that I saw
Sure, if a
worked
dog,
better.
and I totally agree, going back to dogs get to decide what they find reinforcing, right? We're addressing a group population here, and so statistically, a lot of dogs find food reinforcing. If they don't, then, I would argue that a lot fewer dogs truly appreciate, and watching the petting consent test, learning about displacement behaviors, all of that, unless you have a relationship with that dog, right, we don't ever assume that dog, unless they are showing you the body language that indicates it, really loves being pet, right? And so, and I talk about markers and treats mostly in the context of actual training.
Or a ball is a love to me,
Right,
giving them a
right.
ball because they're excited about that ball.
Right, which can have its ups and downs, right, if we're working on arousal management, which I'll talk about. Yes, exactly. So dogs get to decide what they find reinforcing. The more knowledge we can bring to the table about behaviors, meaning body language, the behaviors that dogs do, lifting one paw is a behavior. This means I'm uncertain, right, typically. So if we can, then it's a lot easier to parse out, what the dog finds reinforcing. Do you know what I mean? So yes, you called it, I'm done walking, and yes, well, it wouldn't work at all to try to bustle some huge dog, and that wouldn't even be fair or something we'd recommend.
Yeah, why stress it?
Then you whip out, okay, maybe you'll follow this cheese, okay, good, like just, whatever works. But it's a good question, and I think we'll cover some of it kind of nuanced in a minute. So when the dogs are in the run, what can we mark and reinforce? Because you got that door there, right? Which is why I like this. And so one way that we can, oh my God, here she is, here they are, ah, right? I want to try to interrupt the adrenaline loading process. We're not going to be 100% successful, obviously. But one way that one thing that we can, catch it when we can mark 4 on the floor. If a dog is just standing instead of jumping, that's a great, if you walk up to the run, and I usually like to get down because it tends to bring the dog down as well. And once they've got that 4 on the floor, yes. Now, they might not be able, this is why I like the thumb in this environment, because they can always see that through that door. And so I would, yes, and then I would deliver the food, right? And so I'm looking for anything that I can mark. and reinforce, because it does a couple things. It can get out of the, oh my God, that, you know, and activate the seeking system, which is connected to the reward system. That's what gets activated, when we have it too. It's what gets activated in the brain when there's an anticipation of a reward, when we're trying to solve something, right? So when the dog, you know, if they're just like, ah, you know, to way high arousal, if we can do anything, yes, to just let, you know, to interrupt that process and letting them know at that moment, hey, we've got some stuff here for you. We are a source of reinforcement, right? So we can mark 4 on the floor. Squatting can bring the dog down. We can mark eye contact, right? If the dog is, you know, just looks at us, yes, I'm looking for reasons to reinforce this dog. I'm looking for anything, right? Eye contact. A momentary break in the barking. I find too that, you know, if they're bark, bark, oh my God, bark, 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 right? And then sometimes if I just change my picture, my body, I'll get down and there's a moment, yes. And don't worry about like time, you know, I would say, and I don't know what your backgrounds are in actual training and stuff out in the world, we'd be very worried about exact timing so that we're not reinforcing the wrong thing. Do your best. I would say err on the side of giving them food and trying to get this thing going, right? But like a momentary break in the barking. If they offer a sit, easy one, yes, and you know, get the treat in there. Any pro-social behavior, you know, this, right, wiggly, hey girl, hey, you know, anything like that. Yes, right, again, looking for reasons to pay
That would
the
be
dog.
really good for Mary Kate and Ashley. Whenever, if they show any of that, like, I'm happy to see a behavior, reward that, because that's what we need more from them. So we want to make sure that they
Good.
know that that's something
Brilliant.
that is going to be rewarded.
Right. And first let outs, keep in mind sense of urgency, pottying, all that kind of stuff, right? They gotta get out and go. I mean, you might just be limited and, you know, I don't wanna keep them in there, they're being tortured. And again, freebies are fine. You know, I always like to, you know, if I go up to any run for any reason, whether I'm getting a dog out for an eval or I'm just gonna take him out, whatever, I always let him know, I got some good stuff here in my little pouch.
So would you do that like for first runs in the morning? Because our thing is get them out so they can pee. And then
Yeah,
the
I wouldn't
next
hold him
bout,
out, yeah.
I would spend the time.
And I wouldn't even spend that much time in the run, right? I wouldn't.
we don't.
I
We
wouldn't-
don't. We're in.
Yeah, I wouldn't
We
like,
go back.
this is just a quick in the run, what can we mark and reward, kind of quickly. Just again, to get the dog like, hey, you seem interesting at this point now because you had some pretty tasty stuff.
For very first outs, probably not,
Yeah.
just get them out. And then for their second outs, that 11 to 2 shift is going to be a really nice time to do this, because that's the most mellow shift. The dogs just are a little bit chaotic in the morning for their first outs. They're expecting all of the noise and chaos of cleaning and everything. So, but I also want to stress, don't just try and get them out, because that creates more of a chaotic environment.
Yes.
So slow it down. Just try and be methodical and plan a little bit more. You don't need to, you know, be as slow as a snail, but just try and think that energy brings the energy in the
Yeah.
kennel up.
Right.
Right, I don't have the energy, I just have the, okay, I can't spend the time with the dog out in the run, I need to get him so that I
Yeah.
can get him
Yeah,
back.
And no one
That's why
I can
suggested,
get
I mean, it
the
takes
others.
2 seconds, yes,
Yeah.
boom. All right,
And then let's
now the dog knows I've got food, they're looking at me a little differently, here's my leash, I might even slip a treat through the leash, get it over the head, and out we go, right? Versus, oh God, I've got to, you know. So this, arguably, could also be a moment for us to be just like, okay, what am I looking at right here? But again, we're not spending a ton of time, but it's important because they're there. That door means you showing up, and that door there means something to them. And I'll talk a little bit about what we kind of don't want it to always mean. So we'll talk about, and we're going to run through the training part of it because this is what's going to be broken down into future sessions with the group. We want to all get good at how to teach a dog a marker. The name game, right? I mean, you say their name, Fido, give them a treat.
I have a question.
yeah.
How long does it take a hound dog to learn the name they give them here?
Well, all dogs are different, so depending on their emotional state and depending on our timing and our clarity, very quickly. Because remember, what a name is just a word that just becomes hopefully a cue. well, ultimately a name is just a cue for them to check in for like, yeah, what? Right, you say their name and they look at you. That's really the point of the name. So if we can do a couple, again, maybe a 10 treat training session in your outing, and I'll break down what a typical outing might look like. Maybe the first couple treats are simply you're saying their name, Lucy treat, Lucy treat, right? They don't have to be doing any behaviors, except, you know, we don't want them if they're mauling us, we don't want to try to fit it in, but you know what I'm saying? So just saying the word and the treat. So when I'm working with home clients who have a new dog and they want to, changing a name is so easy. And everyone should know that and be able to tell the adopters that, because people think weirdly, well, not weirdly, I guess it makes sense, but you know, that like the dog's name, ooh, like that dog's name in the shelter is like, you know, Gonzo or, you know, something nuts. And then they, you know, but his name is Gonzo and that might, you know, whatever. Can you change his name? Girl, and you can change their name so easily. But it's literally, and with people at home, it's a couple sessions over a, you know, maybe for 3 days. They learn real quick. Oh, I heard that sound, Lucy. You know, that means something. But yes, when you're changing the name, and I love changing names, by the way, depending on the dog coming in. But because sometimes dogs don't have a good association with their name, especially if their name's been used as a punishment, which happens all the time, even with like regular people who aren't abusing their animals. Touch. This is a very easy one I like to teach because it's easy for the people and it's easy for the dogs to learn. When you say touch, present your hand, the dog targets your hand or a 2-finger target with their nose. I love that behavior, very easy to teach. Then we might work on the 1, 2, 3 walk. And there's videos, by the way, for this on the playlist. That's a great exercise to get dogs from point A to point B. It works great for reactivity. Let's go. That's just a behavior that means we're going to change direction now. All of these are done in the context of a training session, right? Something that we're going to actively try to teach the dog. The look away game, that's for reactivity. And that's, you know, and the information about it is up on the resource center, but I do want to do work with that here. Any good behavior? We can mark and reinforce. Eye contact that's offered can be very powerful with shy dogs. So don't forget, eye contact for shy dogs, well, for lots of dogs, is a little creepy. Am I creeping you out yet? Do you know what I mean? And we tend to get so like, oh, and we don't even realize. But yes, so any offered eye contact that they just offered that we didn't even do that for or anything. Eye contact in response to their name. If a dog comes when you've like actually called it to you, I love reinforcing that. If a dog has 4 on the floor when it approaches you or sits, I love to reinforce that. Sees another dog and doesn't react. A big mistake we make is forgetting to reinforce the good stuff that we see. Because dogs can become reactive in a shelter environment, right? It doesn't always mean they were that way before they started. So if you're out in a yard and with a dog and then some other dog walks by and the dog you're with just is like processing and watching, reward that, right? Take that opportunity to reward that. Walking next to you, leash or no leash. If you're just walking around one of those yards and the dog just shows up next to you, yes, right? Pay them. The touch cue, I repeated that. Okay, so those are all specific behaviors that there's a way to teach them that I want to work on in future sessions. I mean, you can all get started on them. They're on videos and stuff like that. Okay, outings. So there's some great research that's finally hit the public on shelter animals that's sort of kind of getting more mainstream, and I wanna just kind of talk about it here. Again, you guys are so lucky. Low occupancy, lots of volunteers, right? So in theory, it feels like we should get these dogs out as many times as we can during a day. That's what you would think. However, more isn't always better. We have the danger of turning these guys into what's fondly called adrenaline junkies. We can actually rewire their neural pathways when they're here, and that's something we want to avoid. So what happens with an adrenaline junkie? And by that I mean that the dog learns, well, they're triggered by any movement, any in front of their run, anybody walking by. Okay, because again, they learn by association, remember? So they say, oh, it's my time to go out. Oh, my time to go out. And when adrenaline rises in the system, cortisol tends to go with it, especially in an environment like this. And after a single event of, arousal, cortisol and adrenaline can stay high in the bloodstream for up to 72 hours after one event. So y'all got a lot of cortisol running through, and what we're learning about human health with the whole cortisol thing, it's easy to kind of see like, oh yeah, I kind of get like, ooh, how that could be a bad thing. So they start to become hypervigilant in their runs. Oh, somebody's moving over there. Oh, it's about time for my 6th outing. They tend to become hypervigilant. They can start to escalate into high arousal states really quickly. Like a switch flips and they're like boom, and then that chemistry really goes up. They start anticipating that any sound or movement is a trigger for like, okay, good, I'm gonna get out of here, I'm gonna get out of here. And just because they're thinking, well, we don't know what they're thinking, no one does, but okay, good, I'm gonna get out of here, doesn't mean that's the right thing to do. And if anyone's ever raised a child, a human being, what they want isn't always the best thing for them, okay? So, but they start to get, and again, so they're just, think of yourself in a constant, because remember, we have the same emotional systems hardwired as the dogs. We're mammals, right? Think of yourself, if you're constantly in a state of anticipation, edgy. So a lot of times they'll do the full barking, spinning, jumping, when people are walking by, right? Because they're just overcome. It's very hard for them to calm down, even after, especially in a facility type environment, even after the play and the walks, it can be very hard for these dogs to calm down. And I'll show you quickly after this, but some good solid studies have shown that these please, we don't need science to tell us this, we already know. High arousal behaviors in the run, barking, jumping, pacing, those dogs tend to stay here a lot longer, right? The dog and for its own reasons, I don't love these dogs either, but the one that just sits in the back of the run, those dogs tend to go more quickly. Now that dog probably has a whole host of other problems. But, we don't want to encourage high arousal. What the research says, and I'm just, here are the studies, right? This study, 2017, which is about the most current, well, there's some other ones going on, but this is a very well accepted published study that we already know shelter dogs sleep far less than a dog in a home environment. What do we know about sleep? The different stages of sleep. Does anybody track their sleep? Anybody have one of those junkies you look at in the morning? I sleep. We know the deep sleep, right? That's when our body is healing. That's when our brain's doing a bunch of stuff. We know that REM sleep is really good for our brain. And then, of course, there's the other stage of sleep, light sleep, also needed. But all that restorative sleep. So we know that, if I go to a puppy house, that puppy needs to be sleeping 20 hours a day. People are like, oh my gosh, well, no wonder he's a little crazy nutbag at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. He's not getting enough rest. So they sleep far less when they're here. They need, for their health, longer, uninterrupted periods. So they get the overnight period. I don't know what the shelter's like overnight. I don't think there's a bunch going on here. So they get that 8 hours or whatever. But if they really need 18 hours, which is what most dogs need, they could be missing out. This study showed that the more calm, relaxed behavior, in the kennel are adopted faster. Like I said, high arousal behaviors associated with longer stays. So we're looking at that now and saying, okay, good. How do we do now? You work at Bradshaw, Front Street, no problem. Those dogs are lucky if they get out once, because there's so many dogs, right? Which is a whole other problem in its own. We see rage, we see cage stress, we see all this. Dogs aren't getting what they need, especially our high drive dogs, whatever. But there's a balance, because what we do inadvertently sometimes, and I see this sometimes in the outside world, but I mostly see it in the rescue or shelter environment.
I have a question if I can do it.
Yeah.
What you're saying is what I've experienced, and I'm rethinking how I do things now. I mean, the first thing I do when I come in for my shift is I go in every cage and see how long has it been since every dog was out, so I know where I'm going to start.
Mm-hmm.
And then we try to stagger. So maybe we need to take out all row 3 dogs at once, one volunteer, so that the row 3 is only touched once.
Was that a thumbs up? Okay.
100%.
Okay. And
Instead
then-
of ins and outs of every single row at any different time, if you
Yeah.
take all the dogs in that one row out at the same
and then
time,
leave them alone for
and
the
then
rest
leave
of
the
your
other
shift.
rows alone, that kind of creates less
Yes.
traffic,
Okay.
which
Yes.
creates less adrenaline.
Environmental.
And we also
Good idea.
Good idea.
So, so good, implement that. The danger of coming up with ideas.
We do have some shifts that operate that way, and it works very great.
Yeah, I
Okay.
thought we did do that at one point.
Well, you're on one of the shifts that does that.
So you wanna think about it from a classical conditioning standpoint, right? Again, dogs learn by association. Person predicts an outing, predicts excitement, then can predict these barking and other arousal behaviors. So good, how are we gonna mitigate that? This is the real world consequences. We create junkies, so then we send them out into the world and they've learned this number one. You know, so a lot of times they have poor crate skills, they're restless, attention seeking at home, they're addicted to this level of dopamine and you know, their brain, even bad habits, even with humans, provide a dopamine bump. We bite our nail, rip that nail off, dopamine squirt, right? So we know that we can create bad habits that the brain sees like, yeah, go for it. Because do we not all live this anyways in our regular life? We already know things we do are bad, but we do them anyway. So our goal would be don't risk setting dogs up for problems, right? If we can avoid it. So a big trend that I'm seeing in these, again, very blessed environments where we have the ability to do this, fewer outings, they're longer, right? So it's not quick. So maybe it's 2 to 3 outings a day in this environment is kind of what I was thinking.
Is that counting the first out?
If I would say
Last
3,
out.
Yeah, in last out.
yeah, well, those are outings, right? So we would have to ask ourselves, and it's gonna be very dog dependent, right? So if you've got, a dog that is kind of not an arousal junkie, well, you have to look at two, physically, age, what does this dog really need? I still think there's first and last, but there's those ones in between that we can really have the luxury to kind of go, you know what, I'm gonna give you a good 25, 30 minutes. You're gonna do enrichment, decompression first, right? And we might, and I even the dogs that we think I'm gonna take this dog for the leash walk. I wouldn't do that first. I do yard time first. Or long line, you get to go sniff, and I don't know where you do that. I guess the pasture here. But where there's this some sense of agency because we go from the run, which is then we put them on the short leash and we're gonna go try to walk this dog, right? And the dog, whatever, unless you're blessed and you have one that really, an older dog maybe that just likes to do this. But they're going from one constrained environment to then another where they're trapped on a leash environment and they're just right? So I don't know how fulfilling that is. So I really like before, and I love that, you guys are allowed to take the dogs and go on walks. I just suggest get some sniffy time first, and then you can do a little walk.
So sniffy time by themselves, because they get plenty of sniffy time when we're outside walking them too.
Yeah, yes,
So you want sniff
a little
time.
let them get their head together, right? Before you then strap them in on, and I love that when you're walking, let them do it. Let them sniff. Let them.
Except not in the facility, not in the buildings or in the
Correct.
like the aisleways, the
Oh,
runs,
yes, no.
the halls.
Outside of the building.
Yeah,
right?
but they do need that agency to be able to put their head down, have a sniffari. They don't like being on a very short leash. It freaks them out if they
Especially
just
if
have
they don't
somebody
know you.
holding.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
they're trapped against this person they don't know, and they're like, oh my gosh. So I would, and you all are gonna have to decide that, but less is more in this, in this area. So a typical outing, what it might look like. We're doing sniffari / exploring. When we let the dog do that for a while, and again, it's, the dog will tell you when it is done doing that. Because sometimes they're avoiding you when they're doing that as well, especially if you're a person, and again, I'm not slamming anybody, we're all well intended, especially if you're, hey buddy, how you doing today? Hey, well, maybe I wanna pet you, right? A lot of dogs will be like, oh my God, I just have a lot to do. And so I tend to just back off, let them dog, and then wait for them to kind of be like, oh, all right, I've done that work, let me just hear you again, and then I might toss a couple pieces on the ground, and I would use kibble for that, just forage, see how they respond. Do they go, oh look, interesting, and they got it? Or are they like, I don't even wanna think about that right now? That's telling you something else about that dog. But this, again, typical, it's not gonna be for every dog, but it gives us a framework, a place to start. Then I might say, okay, good, the dog's like, seems ready to do something else. I might do a 10 treat session on a marker if it's new to the dog, or a new behavior, or behavior that the dog's been working on. Or if the dog, you're like, I don't know, I don't even know, I don't have it in my brain right now, I just might start marking behavior that I like. The dog looked at me, the dog has 4 feet on the floor, the dog sat, you know, I might do, because that's the working part of the session. Again, it's hitting a different part of the brain. And then maybe if they like to play with toys, I want Kara Fike actually to do a session on arousal here. How do we do this and then this? Bring a dog up with the ball, and then we need to bring them down. We gotta put some checks and balances in that. If we take a dog out who's a ball-driven, crazy, doesn't see anything, and just ha 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 ha, all they do is the ball, I'm pretty specific about how I play with that, because what am I trying to do? I'm trying to manage the arousal, right? Tug, love tug, right? Some dogs, pick your pity, they like the tug. Tug's a very intimate game too, so don't expect them to all do it at first. But like if you know, I love tug, it's fun, boo 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 boo. But like the last thing I want to do is tug and then go, all right, you got to go back into the run. So I'm picky, and so I would like to have. I'm making a note to myself, and I'll rely on everyone else to remind. Yes, have Kara, because she volunteers here. Let's. What are some things we can do with dogs to help them manage arousal during play? If you've ever done dog sports or anything like that, those people are really good at that stuff. Then we might say go 1, 2, 3, walk back to the run if this is then practice, or you know any other rewardable behavior. Or sometimes they're dragged back and you're just holding on for dear life, and that's okay too. I usually will throw food down while I'm trying to get out of the run, or just some way to again leave them with something, and that's great for kibble or treats. I tend to use the treats for that, maybe 3 or 4, just because like, I know, we're going back in, over here at least there's something good to eat. And so that's typically like how I might, in my brain, break up an outing. However, numbers 3 and 4, that might not even happen, depending on the dog. If you've got a dog that's like, not quite sure about much, right? On my mind, I'm gonna say, I'm gonna shut up, and I'm just gonna be here and see if that dog at some point on its own terms decides to come check me out. And guess what? When they sniff you, that is not an invitation to touch them. And that's, where we wanna do a deeper dive on the whole more, I call them reserved dogs, more sensitive dogs. Because we can just think of yourselves as humans. Some of us, when we meet people, hi, nice to meet you. And we do eye contact and we shake a hand or whatever. But we've all met people who greet people differently, like maybe someone who hugs. Someone who hugs and you've never even met them before. They're a hugger. Some of us go like, oh, that's interesting, right? Or some people are great with it, right? It doesn't, but a dog, you're gonna know from that dog the way that the behaviors it's doing if it's a hugger or not. And then, so that's typical outing. Any questions about that? Again, I know it's so nuanced. It's not like I can stand up here and do these 5 things. But as you get to know the dogs, you'll have a much better sense of, and if you're watching the dog in front of you, you'll have a much better sense. These are things that I put in here for this shelter specifically. They're all good. You tell me if we're still doing this, but the always and nevers of safety, using the radios to announce when we're bringing out a dog. You guys would be shocked how many well-run, funded facilities. I go radios, you guys don't have radios, they're like, huh. It's, so I love that you do that. Allow dogs that may become reactive or incredibly fearful dogs that are, you're thinking, I might not be able to catch this dog again. Let them drag the leash in the yard, right? You need to have access to the dog. And then I'm safety-wise, the thumb holding the, can I borrow your leash? I just have found that this way, and then you've got, right? You're looping it and you've got it in your hand this way is the safe way to do it, because you can always pull back. I worry about this, wrapping, and I just worry, but it's through your, and I used to have a picture of that in here, maybe I put it up on the page, but it's on your thumb here, and then you have, a lot more control, and it won't break your hand or, pull you over. Suitcase wrap, kind of a controversial thing, are you guys even doing that anymore? Okay.
Pretty much, no.
Occasionally.
Occasionally, yeah.
Yeah.
I like
have
the Easy
to.
Walkers better.
Right, we love a Easy Walk harness if we can get there. In an emergency situation, the suitcase wrap is warranted. Make sure you're up under armpits and not around kidneys or over genitals with the back part of it. And just be careful, because not all dogs are used to that sensation. And one reason it sort of went out of favor, well, it's definitely not like a training modality that I would recommend anyone use regularly, but it sort of went out of favor because what happened enough times that it hit the social media was the dog hit the end of the line, they felt the squeeze and turned around and redirected on the handler because they were like, what the hell was that? Right? They had just not felt that before. So just be careful when you do it. I put it in there because yes, it can be like a lifesaver if you really, really need it. But if that's a dog that you always need it for, I'd be looking to say, we gotta get this dog into a harness. And the nevers, never suddenly grab a dog by the collar. That's why I worry with reactivity. We don't wanna be grabbing dogs, especially when they're reacting or if they're at the fence. Use the leash, use a lure, go up, let them know you've got some food, lure them that way. We don't want to attempt to force them. Our guard dogs that have lived free on the roaming on the ranches can be very hard to get back into these spaces. So we want to do something else, but besides, again, because people have gotten hurt shoving the dog in, and then the dog turns around and redirects on them. Toss food, radio for help. Let's figure something else out. And then obviously surprising a dog from behind. We don't want to do that. So okay. There's a million other things to be safe, but those are the kind of things that we can learn on kind of as we're doing them. All right, that's the end.
So for this,
Yeah.
like what I will use for a dog that is barking at the fence, running the fence,
Yeah.
I will have the ball thrower, and I have this is when a treat comes in where I will use a special treat like the cheese.
Yeah.
And if he's running against that fence after another, barking at another dog, I just use that and put it against his chest as I follow him. I'm like, leave it. As soon as he turns, I give him the cheese.
Okay.
And a few of the dogs, it works so well.
Okay, good.
with.
Good.
That way I'm not putting my hand in there or grabbing
Right.
his collar.
And he probably doesn't know what leave it means, but as a human, since we like to talk, we're gonna say words that dogs don't understand the meaning. It doesn't matter. The most impactful thing of what
So
everything
see-
you just described is that he turned away. What I'd throw in, yes,
Okay.
and pay.
That
We
is
want him
something
to
I don't
know
do is
turning
yes.
away, because what we have the danger of is creating what's called a behavior chain in that situation, where dogs and commonly, dog comes up and jumps on us. We're trying to fix jumping, so we immediately cue a sit. Dog sits. Yes, we pay. What the dog has changed, what they will learn is, okay, cool. I cue her. I jump. She says sit. I get paid. Right? So in that context, right, you're stopping them, and they turn around, and if you pay them,
And then good boy.
they have the risk of chaining a lot of things together, right? So with reactive, if a dog has gone over threshold like that, there's really not learning that happens in that mind state. Our big goal is just get it away, lure it, do something. Because what we do risk in that exact scenario that you just explained is now we might be reinforcing all this barking and running at the fence, right? Because it's not seeing, the stopping it, that's not something that the dog is learning anything from. If you're just physically stopping
But
it.
you're stopping and then taking him away from the fence.
Yes, if you do that,
Yeah,
good.
that's exactly.
Good, you do that, you give 3 to 5 seconds. I always like to maybe try to get some behavior, like if they look at me, yes, right? I always am looking for something else after removing them from the situation. And then, yes, I missed the part, I apologize.
I take them to the middle of the, more, away from the fence.
Good, and then mark something else, right? They look at you, yes.
Like their ball, their stuffy, whatever,
Yeah,
if they're interested.
So one word I have not heard you say yet
Yeah.
is no.
That's what I was gonna ask.
yeah, right.
So, I mean, cause I've had dogs that I say no, and they know that that's a negative.
How
So
do you
when-
know that they know?
Well, because I've had dogs in the past that were aggressive, and I say no, and they immediately stop.
Okay.
But what I'll do is, would it confuse them if I say no, they stop and they look at me if I say yes?
So I'm just gonna quibble a little bit. No, what I think a lot of dogs respond to when they hear the word no, right? Because no dog shows up in the catalog of a vocabulary.
Mhm.
Oh, no means I need to stop doing that, or, whatever, right? You have a very deep voice. Mammals, of which dogs are, respond quite differently to low vocal tones. In the mammalian world, low vocal tones signify aggression. Why is it that the wife is like, oh, the dog listens to my husband, but not me? Wait till your father gets home, all that stuff, right? Male voice, so when you say no, that tone is enough to stop it in a dog in its tracks, right?
Mhm.
So if that happens, number one, it's not a training modality. They're not necessarily learning. If they're doing something that's very impulse-based, aggression, reactivity, and you say no, you can stop the behavior. However, it's the fact that they're learning, oh, okay, and putting all that, the part that they're missing in their brain is the big rational part, where they can put all these things, the things that we want them to put together. So aggression is an emotional response. Dogs are over threshold. No learning is really happening there. Their aggression can be, they might go attack somebody and bite somebody. That's usually to get that person to go away, that kind of thing. You can say no to interrupt the behavior, but it's not a training modality necessarily. Now, but in the scenario, so I wouldn't be out there just using it. No, right? Because if they're in a sea of no's, we're doing something wrong on the management side, right? If the dog keeps going back to the fence, we're doing it wrong by letting them to keep going back to the fence. Dog jumps on us. Now, we say no, right? What I worry about in that context is that dog not exactly knowing what they did, and now I've just kind of done a little bit of a relationship smash. Like I've just maybe put, especially if it's a sensitive dog. And dogs, by the way, will jump on you as a distance increasing behavior. It's very common where a dog will, jump up on a person as a way to I kind of wish you'd go away, right? So it doesn't mean always what we think it means. So in an emergency, I will definitely bring out the loud voice, right? Hey, if I'm seeing holy cow, right? Tone matters, all that stuff. But I know that's not a learning thing. I'm just trying to prevent, yeah, I'm just trying to stop it because it's just so out of control. But I don't use it as a training modality.
And then.
Does that make sense?
Yes, and then
Okay.
I'm a paramedic, so I go into people's houses all the time.
Yes.
I, as a rule, tell them, I don't care how friendly the dog is, whatever,
Thank you.
lock the dog up, please, because I've been attacked several times.
Yes.
But on dogs, it's oh, you wouldn't have expected.
They
But-
didn't even know he would do that.
Yeah, because one time I leaned over to touch somebody that was laying on the floor, not even knowing there was a dog in the bed, and I put my hand down, and the dog came after me because I touched the odor. But what I've had, and this is what I was going to ask you, I've had dogs where they were showing aggression. I said out,
Okay.
and they backed off,
Right.
and they went away from me.
Right.
Is that?
Well, that's in that situation. If you're shit, I gotta, pardon my language. I gotta get to, I've gotta get to this thing.
Mhm.
If that worked, and the dog went, went out. Sure, that worked in that instance. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a training modality for a
Okay.
client, and I certainly wouldn't be doing it here because the dog, it's just an unfair setup. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They don't, there's not the context here, they don't,
So positive reinforcement is the best.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank
So,
you.
tone is everything?
And management, don't keep letting it happen,
Yes.
yeah.
So tone is everything. I like him. I am not one of these people that, oh, sweetheart, like a sweet, sicky sweet.
Well,
woman's
dogs
voice.
like that,
I'm
but
not
okay.
at all like
Yeah,
that, so
yeah.
is that a negative? Because I'm more like, I'm just matter of fact.
Well, it
with-
depends on the dog, but biologically, why, you know, when we are working with puppy,
Yes.
yeah, but what I'm telling you is there is a positive, that's hardwired in emotional response to that, right? So that you get, you know, like think about recall. When we're working on recall, puppy, and we're doing this, you get the puppy that runs. If we were like, come, puppy, that sounds very different to a puppy, to a dog, right? So a high, happy voice, I have to tell a lot of my male clients, we gotta, you know, your inner cheerleader, Bob, we gotta get it going, because right now you look like you're threatening, you know, you're threatening.
So we can't have that voice, our voice where, I mean, this is just the way I talk, and so, but yet with saying, okay, come on, let's go. Come on, come
Yeah,
on.
well, that's fine, because you're not going, let's go!
Or do I
You know what
really
I
need
mean?
to get to that
No,
sicky
no,
sweet?
that's, well, but I use that high, happy voice when I wanna create excitement and create, you know what I mean? A lot of time I ain't doing nothing here, right? I might do it in the context of, let's go, recall, or let's go, follow me. But I'm not gonna sit there and pump up a dog with a high, happy voice in this environment, cause the last thing they need is, excitement,
Yeah.
right?
I
Okay,
have to
folks.
go. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
That was
Check out
great.
the page, reach me, holla.
Is
if you
everything
need
on this
anything.
website that I can look up?
This is all your resources that are up here. I'm gonna re-record this. Everything else is already in
All
there.
right, thank you.
You're welcome.
That was very helpful, thank you.
so
The only complaint I have is I got a lot of thumbs up, but I never got a treat. So, work on that. You got a lot of